Hi everyone, I'm Frederick. I'll make my presentation on as-built drawings and documentation. Today we'll be covering the best practices for surveying, drafting, and for modeling as-built plans. That's me. My name is Michael Lee. I run PPM's Northern California office. More than 2 decades, PPM has been a reliable source of as-built for architects, designers, engineers, and homeowners all over the country for the need of quality and accurate as-built plans. I actually started out at PPM measuring and drafting everything at the old school way by hand myself. I still remember getting to a client's house at 8 a.m. and wrapping up at 6 p.m. To the point where they're inviting me over to dinner. And for those that have been here before, you might remember Colin Maloney. He's made his way to literally greener pastures in Seattle. I think he's probably out being caught in the rain surveying right now for a job. Okay. So as a reminder, here's the course description and objectives. I'll just pause here if you guys are going to be looking to talk for quite some time, and I'll let everyone just kind of be with us tonight. Before we start, before we start. So today's course will cover 3 main topics: laser scanning with a LiDAR scanner, generated point clouds from said scanner, and 3 as-built drawings either in 2D CAD or the building information modeling. Now, before we begin let me conduct a brief survey. Everyone fill in how you currently get your as-built plans. For those couple of guys that are here present, you can fill out the form, A, B, or C, and then for those that are attending virtually, please feel free to write in the chat, and then someone from our team will be able to pull that. Just out of curiosity. Okay, so let's begin with section 1, laser scanning. What is it and why is it helpful? So there's the 2 main types of laser scanning, and they're made by a variety of different companies. So it's still a really new form of technology. For the sake of talking about, because this is a small firm form, for the sake of talking about residential and simpler commercial spaces, we'll be focusing on mobile LiDAR scanners. So they're still extremely accurate. They're less heavy duty and less
We're good? All right. Okay. So today we'll be focusing on mobile LiDAR scanners. So updating or replacing a proven method for doing as-built or doing anything is not easy. No matter what industry you're in, there's a lot of research and development involved. The initial purchase of these equipment is often doesn't even get close to the amount of time and later purchases needed to fully understand how to most efficiently and effectively use said equipment. We're still trying to figure out new tips and tricks on how to use these LiDAR scanners today. I've been using some for over 5 years now, and we're still learning how best to use it. The first step you take is the most important, and the rest is hard work and diligence. So even though it might be more difficult to transition, making that change to laser scanning as a survey method provides you with faster data acquisition to an extent, measurements that are more accurate that can be taken by hand. So it reduces the odds of human errors in the field. A more thorough solution, it allows surveyors to gather more data than is necessarily needed to complete a project. There's pros and cons to that. Obviously, I'll talk about that later. And then it creates the potential to make a digital twin to pull additional data down the line. That's actually something we're working on right now for larger projects for our national team, where creating digital twins can help with facilities management for hotels and commercial spaces, and it ends up for these commercial spaces, it's a large upfront cost, but down the line, they're able to continually improve their space without requiring, interruption and someone to go out there and remeasure everything every single time.
So I have a question. Digital twin, not just a copy of the set you do.
Digital twin, is that just a copy of the first set? Yes and no, not necessarily. In this with um, new tools that are out in AutoCAD and Revit, essentially you're not just creating like a block or an item for the object. You're able to, there's more like new software integration. So it's a virtual, copy. So yes, it is a virtual copy, but no, it also helps with facilities management as well.
And do the customers typically own the CAD files?
Yes, yeah. So whoever we deliver the files to, you're free to do it however, make any updates you want. All right, so what does LiDAR mean? We hear about it in news and articles all the time. Like I said, it's still fairly new. When homeowners ask me about it, I tell them, have you seen those self-driving cars in San Francisco with these mobile scanners? I am the car. I am the one holding the technology. Um, so hence the surveyor is mobile, and we're holding that scanner up. It stems from the word radar. We all know what radar is. And then LiDAR means light detection and ranging. And what that essentially does is that scanner is shooting out light and it's refracting and it's measuring the time it takes for that light to bounce to a solid object and the time it reflects back. And then the algorithm inside then stitches all that together to kind of create a cohesive point cloud file. So that image you see, it looks like a solid object, but what it actually is millions of little points measured by the LiDAR scanner our surveyor is holding. So each measurement is logged, and then it's spinning around and taking measurements in all directions at the same time.
This is the same technology you see like a disco. You shine a red light on something,
yep.
You press the button, it goes the distance. But
yep.
the light can be on there for you measure the time. You press the button, I guess.
Right, right. Yeah, so it's the same tech as a Leica Disto, except times 1,000 at every each given second. I didn't. All of our equipment's being in use by our team. If someone wasn't scanning today, I would have did a little demonstration, but getting some as-built done right now. So there's two kinds of LiDAR scanners we use, mobile and terrestrial. Like I said, we'll be talking about mobile today. As many of you know, so we use two main scanners, one by GeoSlam and one by Leica itself. As many of you know, GeoSlam was recently purchased by Faro. And then anyone that's hand measured has definitely heard of, the Disto by Leica or Bosch. I'm partial to Leica myself. I've had some weird numbers from a Bosch scanner or a Bosch Disto. So using a mobile scanner is preferable if you need accuracy and your time on site is limited. Since most individual scans for a single family residential can take 15 to 45 minutes. And that wide range is really dependent on access. If someone says, I need my office at this time, we need to do a separate scan and merge it manually later. We recommend you process the scan on site to check your results before you leave. Once the scan's complete, you need the SLAM algorithm, which interprets all that measurement and movement from the scanner to produce a 3D point cloud. And after that point cloud is then generated, there's time needed on site to review the point cloud to ensure accuracy. So most errors in scanning or processing can be spotted really quickly. You'll be able to see ghosting or duplications fairly quickly. But there are some things that we do verify on site that are slight variations that we want to check. Here is a picture of our surveyor Daniel Noble from our LA office. You could tell by the mask and the gloves. This was like early 2020, where we were wiping down with alcohol wipes before and after, and then wiping everything else down with the gloves and everything. All right, so this is an example of what point cloud data might look like in plan view. I'm going to go ahead and play the video for you real quick. It's just kind of rotating the point cloud around. So even though there's no photo-based colorization for this specific cloud, we're using a height ramp along the z-axis where it looks like red is the lowest point and purple is the highest point on the z-axis. This colorization helps for us to catch important features on site, even without photo colorization. And if you look, we're not getting complete roof data. That's often the case, especially if there's some kind of roofing materials where the pitch is too steep or we can't accurately get on. But if we can get the pitch from the sides, our modeling and drafting team can pretty accurately draft it.
Are you taking it from the outside?
Yeah, yeah. So we're for this one, it's a full scan of the interior and exterior. So any roof data that we got is from outside. There's tips and tricks on how to get roof data from inside if there's no access from outside. We could get into the attic, into the attic space, and measure the pitch that way, and use a little bit of both information to get that for you.
Like a couple hundred feet long.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is a project down in, I want to say, I think this one's in LA. Yeah.
And so did you set up your bio thing like a few spots or?
So this is done with a mobile scanner. So our surveyor, yep, yep.
Like your car.
Yeah, exactly. I am the car holding that scanner. We could use a tripod, but yeah, not for this one.
So when a land surveyor does a land survey, they start out with a point somewhere, which is known longitudinally very precisely and elevation.
Right.
I didn't know where it is.
It references itself, so it doesn't reference like real life coordinates, but essentially if I were to scan this room with this scanner, I would start and stop the scan at the same location. And it's the same if you were to do a floor plan of a random room, right? You're not referencing an exact coordinate.
So when you go to a room on the other side of that wall, how does it impact that room this room?
Doors. So if
Can you just repeat the questions they're asking?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So if I am scanning one room, how does it relate to the other room, this one? When we do field visits, one thing that we try to communicate with the client is we need access to all spaces for the duration of the scan. So if I'm scanning one room and I want to reference the other room, relative to this one, I'll have that door open. I'm standing there in front of that door, and what this scanner does is it's scanning the wall in front of me. It references the current scan it's taking, where I am, and it's also shooting through that open door or window to the other room. And then it's using that to stitch two rooms together.
And this is accurate.
Yeah, yeah. Up to an extent. Like I say, everything is up to an extent. If it's two huge warehouse spaces and you're standing in between the door of one and the other wall is so far away, it's not going to be as accurate as if you could do it with a disto because the scanner just doesn't shoot that far. That being said, that's very rare where that happens. And if that is the case, there's other scanners that are better equipped for
it. Does it know where you are elevation-wise?
Does it know where you are elevation-wise? No, no. So when we deliver the files, it's just we use the finished floor of the entry, 0 on the z-axis. I get that question a lot where they say, can you do a land survey with this? Is there benefit of doing this with the drone? Absolutely, yeah. So I'm going to be talking about 3 scanners. One is made by Leica. We're testing out one called the one that I'll talk about later is the BLK to go, and then the one that we're testing out is called the BLK to fly. So it is something that we're testing out. It's different counties have different drone ordinances, so it's something that can be used, and we're looking to use that down the road. Alrighty. So as mentioned, here's the BLK to go. And here it is in action. You can tell by that green glow around it. It's scanning the Casa Del Mar Hotel in LA. It's the most compact scanner we use right now. But despite its size, it's pretty heavy duty. I've personally scanned spaces from entire hotels in San Francisco to little crawl spaces. We use an iPad with it to check the generated point cloud before leaving the job site. And then when used correctly, it's extremely precise. And I prefer to use it when like a reflected ceiling plan or interior elevations are within the scope, since it does use photo-based colorization. So whether or not we use the onboard camera to make a colored point cloud or not, we still get a pretty dense cloud. I one of the
When you say photo-based
photo-based colorization means when I'm taking a scan with this scanner in particular, there's a little camera inside that's taking snapshots. So, if we go back a couple slides, this is not, photo-based. This is, just height ramp based, right? This one, let's see if I have an example. See, this slide, this is a point cloud, but you can see that the colors are accurate, like true to life. So it's using a combination of photos and the scans to give you, yeah, exactly. So that really helps when we're doing interior elevations. If something is flush, if it's cabinets that are flush, instead of measuring to do accurate elevations, you don't want to measure, the face of every cabinet. It'll show you where the cabinet faces end. Yeah, let's see, next slide. Here's an example of a project we did using the BLK to go. It's a building right here in Berkeley. I think it was 25,000 square foot multi-tenant office space. We call it Project 4479BA. This was done in AutoCAD with RCP and electrical plan with the scope. It took 3 of our surveyors a combined total of 40 hours on site to scan, photograph, and manually document elements such as RCP and electrical. Another advantage that I forgot to mention about the color-based scan is I remember for this one specifically, there were 2 areas where we got on site and they end up saying, we don't want photos here because it was some law firm and they had some legal information on the wall. And we say, we need the photos for QA. And it was just what we were able to do is just use that scan. And although it's not photorealistic, but it's easy to determine things, determine what various things are. If it's not photo-based, you see an object kind of cropping up. You don't know if it's a low wall or if it's a shelf. Using that photo-based colorization, we could figure out what it is, but it's not so clear where we could see, read the writings on papers on the wall.
Photo thing is using the BLK to go.
Yep.
That's part of it.
Yeah, so the photo thing is worked with the BLK to go, currently not with the other 2 scanners that we have.
No, I don't want to go too.
Yeah.
In other words,
yeah. Yeah, for sure, definitely. So I'll talk about that later. The question is, what are the different deliverables that we offer? And it's all very, customizable depending on client requests. All right, next scanner is the GeoSlam Horizon. This is the most heavy duty, in my opinion, of the mobile ones. So what Donna was asking earlier about how to scan rooms relative to each other. I was saying it might not be good for warehouses. This thing can handle it. It shoots extremely far, sometimes too far, where it just gets so much extra data that we end up having to crop it ourselves. The last major project we used the scanner for was the exterior of the Monterey Bay Aquarium. I ended up scanning that one myself. And that one was kind of scary because we ran out of time and it was during like peak rush hour for the aquarium, but it still managed to get it done. It scans up. So with this scanner, you could scan up to about 50,000 square foot in hours. Of course, that varies, like I said, depending on access, construction density, as well as the scope. The scanner costs $45,000, software included. And the next slide is what that output looked like, that scan I did. That little arrow that I drew, that's pointing to my car. They're in the parking lot in the back. We didn't get full coverage because it wasn't needed, so that's why you see that kind of empty spot in the middle. And then I kind of circled the 3 red areas. You see all those kind of dots and looks like movement, little ghosts walking around. Those are people. So that was despite the thousands of people that passed me while I was scanning, I still managed to get a really good scan in. And then you can see these two large protruding pipes along the middle. If you guys have been to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, that you'll see that right when you head up to the entrance. And so it was able to shoot from the ground floor where that large circle was, and it was able to shoot all the way up to that smokestack.
Pixels there.
What are the distances between pixels on the scan? Yeah. So the distance between the resolution between pixels for this one, it depends on what you need. If it's a floor plan only or something, you can kind of run through it, and because you're shooting at those objects less times, it's going to be less dense. But if the project requires an interior elevation, you go at a slower pace and it gets you a higher density point cloud.
Like for this example, let's say that particular map, are you actually saying your accuracy is good, that the width of that lamppost, you can tell me that it's 5.5 inches instead of 15.5 inches?
Right. Yes. Essentially, the short answer is yes. If you need a specific width of object, we can pull it. How accurate it is so that's a question that we get asked a lot, and it's a tricky answer to it because the scan is incredibly accurate. The scan is incredibly accurate, but in drafting from that scan, you do have to make concessions. So if you want to come back and say, I need to know that for anyone that's kind of done as-built the old-fashioned way, you do a small house, even a small house, there's always gonna be a little bit of a closing error when you close it because no house is built perfectly orthogonally. So while the scan is completely accurate, we do model and draft as orthogonally as possible unless it's a very obvious angle. So we do make those concessions. The short answer is the scan is extremely accurate. We model and draft to the nearest half inch.
Do we take the scan and then draw over it?
Yeah, essentially what we do is take that scan and either trace or model over it. So here's an example of a single-family AutoCAD model scanned by the Horizon. So I was saying it's heavy duty; it could handle large spaces. Also, we use it for single-family residentials all the time. This one is in Los Altos Hills. They got a remodel package, which is floor, roof, and exterior elevations, and then they wanted sections, but we said I think I ended up convincing them they don't need sections because it's a 3D model, right? You could take as many sections as you want based on the information that we've provided.
So you are saying this particular image here is created natively in AutoCAD using the other data, but it's still created from scratch.
Yep. So yeah, this one is created from scratch. We imported that point cloud into AutoCAD, and then one of our modelers modeled it based on that point cloud.
Digital trace over.
Yep.
But it's essentially the same as designing it from scratch.
Yes. So digital trace over, same as designing from scratch. Just repeating myself.
Within some sort of CAD software, you take point cloud and have it convert point cloud into surfaces.
Is it possible to take the point cloud and convert it into surfaces right now? As of right now, it's down the line with who knows with the capabilities of AI and AutoCAD.
So if you take the accuracy, then you are then taking the point cloud and tracing over with a CAD program. Do you have the ability to snap to planes on the wall and therefore accurately position your lines?
How do we maintain the accuracy? We literally just trace over it. You take a snip, a section, like a live section of that point cloud when it's imported into whatever program you're using, and you.
But I mean, say I include that evil line here. I know that line is right on.
If you, yeah.
I mean, you look at it. I think the question boils down to if you have to make a judgment.
Yeah.
The draftsman has to make a judgment, and that judgment can be off as much as you have to date themselves.
The point cloud, I guess the question is the 2D drawing or the 3D point cloud is dependent. It's dependent on the point cloud, right? Just like anything you draft is dependent on the accuracy of the measurement that you take. So if I were to take a disto and shoot it from this wall to that wall and it's giving me 170.3, right? What I draft is as accurate as my measurement. So this one is just we're changing that. We're not relying 100% on the manual measurement. We're relying now on the point cloud. And from personally 6 years of experience using these, it's extremely accurate every time.
But there is still that puzzle solving there. Put lines together for the two-dimensional, three-dimensional, and the draftsman determines that those lines don't close hundreds and thousands of three-dimensional lines and points. Then it's still the draftsman's judgment, whether it's based on 3D or three-dimensional view.
That's exactly correct. So the question is how do we make those concessions, right? The same way, any drafting from hand sketching to 2D plans would be made, because you do have to make those concessions when there are closing errors. We trace over it as accurately as we can, and then if one wall is 0.2 degrees, we'll flip that orthogonally and kind of split that difference along the two walls.
There's one other alternative that at least the smaller project would give you a little bit more confidence in the accuracy. And you take the measurement and draw the line in the field. And so you leave the field with the drawing. And when you're doing the drawing, if something doesn't fit, doesn't make sense, something like that, you see there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a good point. Taking those measurements on site does ensure. So not, for me, if I were to draft this project that we have up here in the 2D AutoCAD, it would take me 30 hours just to do it accurately. And for those instances where we're not, there's hundreds of measurements I can take to ensure I have this correct. When I don't have that luxury, that's when the point cloud really comes in and can kind of cover me. Back when we were doing this by hand, there were times where I'm not able to draft everything on site, and then I go back and I'm trying to draft it on my laptop later, and I figure out something's wrong, and I don't know what it is, right? But now I have the luxury of checking that point cloud and be like, oh, I have dyslexia. I wrote 78, should be 87. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you all the time, but not everything has to be that accurate.
Not everything has to be that accurate. No, definitely not. It depends on the project, really. We get asked that a lot for samples. So the question is, what doesn't have to be that accurate? We get asked that question a lot for San Francisco houses, where they're connected, they have shared walls, and they want if they want a Revit file of one house and they want 3D massing of the two adjacent houses. We say we generally can't get too accurate with the two adjacent houses, but all they need for county submittals is just a large, kind of accurate massing of adjacent properties.
And for the elevations,
how accurate does it have to be for exterior elevations? It depends. It depends on the project. For historical buildings, they want it extremely accurate, and for some office spaces, or just give us a rough idea.
And just a follow-up question: how do you determine which details you would include in your CAD generation?
Yeah, how do we determine what details to include in our CAD generation versus what we pick up? Our plan item sheet, we have standards in terms of this is what we show as a standard for a reflective ceiling plan. And then we work with, plenty of architects that, put notes or, give me a call and they say, hey, we know that you get for RCP, you get ceiling heights, you get sprinklers, you get all registers. Can you also include exposed beams? I say exposed beams. That's also a standard, but I can't think of any like um oh okay, so single family residential when they say standards would show smoke alarms, ceiling height changes, sprinkler heads, and then they say, by the way, we have two conduits running in the finished basement area. Can we show the conduits? So if it's a request, then we usually can get that done.
Exterior elevations.
Again, same thing for exterior elevations by client request. So this is an example. I was saying this scanner that we use is actually the first scanner that I was trained on. It was like me and like three surveyors at a single family house in Ross 5 or 6 years ago, scanning one house right before Christmas, I think. And that's kind of our OG scanner. It's still extremely accurate. It's just not the newest one anymore. They provide software updates, so it's not like it's going to be any less accurate. To kind of talk about that one, this warehouse space was, I think, 27,000 square feet for a project in Seattle. And here's an example of a reflected ceiling plan. So all of the things that we show here, lighting, framing, and kind of that ACT grid below the ACT grid, this is all things that are standard and we show and we capture using the Riva, which is that scanner I showed Frank holding here.
How do you deal with things when you're in a space like that? And maybe there's a white line beam running above, so you're down below, and the bottom plan to that beam, okay, maybe it obscures something else.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're shooting up and there's something projecting in your area,
right?
How do you resolve what it can't see?
How do you resolve what you can't see when shooting up? The same, it's not an X-ray. It can't go through anything, but it's the same way that you would measure it on site. So if we know that's within the scope, and we see a beam and we can't tell, that's when we use a combination of on-site measurements, photos, and the scan to verify everything. So I know you guys have a lot of questions. I'm gonna kind of run through these. If you could save the questions towards the end. I'm getting someone from our team saying something. So now that you've collected the methods for how we discussed earlier, it's time to create the actual plan sets. So I'd like to pause here for our next poll. What software do you guys currently work in? So to answer your question earlier, this is what we provide currently: AutoCAD, Revit, ArchiCAD, and SketchUp. I believe, and don't quote me on it, I believe we're working on doing something in Vectorworks down the road as well. That seems to be the next most requested one. And ArchiCAD is our newest one, so we're still, trying to fine tune it. We offer client template customizations for everything except ArchiCAD right now, and that is being worked on and should be ready this quarter or early next year. How would I rank the popularity? I would say in this order. So AutoCAD, and then a tie between Revit, ArchiCAD, and then SketchUp. Vectorworks, I don't like Vectorworks. Vectorworks is below, which is why we don't offer it yet. Personally, I don't like Vectorworks. That's when I first used, and then I got converted into AutoCAD. It's not too complicated. It just felt more intuitive when I was using it for Apple, for like Macs. I don't have a Mac, so it just AutoCAD suited me better. All right, so reviewing your data before attempting to create a set of as-built from point cloud is a must. Kind of to answer Donald's question earlier, if there's any kind of errors with your cloud, which does happen, using that bad data can either stop you in your tracks when you're drafting or modeling later, or worse, result in a set of incorrect as-builts. So since the scanners have such a wide range, you want to trim up or crop out information. So here you can see it catches things like foliage and even rain if it's raining heavy enough. Um, and we crop that out later. We're on site, so it doesn't crash our laptops later when we're trying to model it. So much like the traditional method of sketching and measuring, properly scanning a structure takes a lot of practice to do correctly and efficiently. Once you're practiced with scanning, you know what to look for in terms of errors. Um, and then you can use that most reliable information to make sure that the first step in the process goes smoothly. Here's an example of a type of space that can create a bad scan. And what happens is if it's a large open space with a lot of repeating structures and there's not a lot of discerning differences, sometimes that tricks the scan, and it's very easy to get a bad scan this way. I've done a warehouse myself where it was just so open and it was repeating columns all along. So what I ended up doing was driving my car into that middle of the warehouse and using that as a unique object for the scanner to then base everything off of. So yeah, repeating objects, small spaces, attics, foundations, large sites, multi-level structures can also pose data integration challenges. But over the however many years we've done this, we figured out ways to deal with each one. And then here I was talking about, ways to catch a bad scan. This is a really obvious one, just drifting across mobile scanners. So when you go outside, obviously the wall does not look like that, and that's something we would catch immediately, and which will result in either manual measurements to make sure this is correct or a rescan. Third section, now that we've collected the data using the methods we've discussed, it's time to create actual plan sets. Which then leads me to our final poll. What is the most important factor to you when obtaining your as-builts? Quality and accuracy, timeliness, efficiency, or cost? All right, so now let's talk about drafting from a point cloud. When drafting from a point cloud, the first thing you need to do is get into the drafting environment, import it directly into AutoCAD or Revit. For Autodesk products, you got to use a program to convert it into a recap file, which we do deliver to some clients on request. And then drafting, it's pretty straightforward, but it's tracing, it's adjusting UCS, even though everyone tells you should never adjust your UCS. In AutoCAD, what we do is open up multiple viewports, have one in the original UCS view, and then adjust everything else accordingly and trace over the point cloud. And we can always go back to the starting point relatively easily. And then point clouds are ideal for Revit. This weird thing about Revit is when importing point clouds into Revit from a recap file, it doesn't look very crisp. And we figured out that you gotta import it from the LAS file into a recap into an E57, and you import that enough, and then you get the correct file into Revit. Only then can you get something that's more user friendly to draft from in using the point cloud. So when drafting, here's an example of taking a slice. Donna asked about this earlier as well. How do we ensure accuracy? So this is the point cloud turned on with a degree of transparency set, so you could literally see and then I think we increased the line weight for the walls so you could see it clearer. But all you're doing is we're taking that live slice of a point cloud and we trim this point cloud a little bit, and we're tracing it over, and it's everything is directly based on the information that we see on the cloud. Once we move that cloud position is 0, the finished floor is 0 on the z-axis. It's just a simple thing of taking that scan, say 50, 60 inches above the finished floor, giving that trim to maybe 10 inches or so, and then seeing this view and tracing. And this is just for a floor plan.
You put dimensions on?
We do put dimensions on there for the PDFs. But that's kind of meant as a quick reference because it's a CAD file. You could open it up and get any dimensions you might need. And then here's another huge advantage of drafting from a point cloud. Even if sometimes you don't request a section, down the road, if you need, 6 more, we can generally get it if it's done with the point cloud. So here it is tracing over that, using a different view, playing around with the UCS, and then we're able to sketch elevation ornamentation that you can include in the drafting as well. So here's an example of a point cloud that one of our surveyors recently did. On the upper left-hand corner, you can see that kind of clothing rack with the jacket. I'm pointing to it there in our scan. With these spaces where it's really tight, and sometimes you might not be able to move through those spaces, well or safely. What we do is we'll take one scan from a certain part of the room, and it's able to gather some data in the other parts of the area. Then we pack up that scanner, we crawl over to the other data, we do another scan of that area that has that area, and then is able to shoot over to the first scan you did, and then we're able to manually merge those on site. So it saves that trouble of crawling around a 2-foot tall foundation space with a $50,000 machine and risk damaging it in any way. So let's talk about some 3D models as well. That was earlier was all kind of 2D drawings. So with 3D models, we do everything as a standard at LOD 200, just because when assessing a structure that's been built from the outside, we're not able to look at interstitial spaces. So which is required for anything LOD 300 and higher. We have a new scanner that I won't talk about today. It's like a BLK, not BLK, like a something 360. It's a terrestrial one on the tripod that is able to handle a little more detailed stuff. But if you can see on the bottom left-hand corner of this church, I believe I scanned that one myself as well. You can see that framing in that atrium in the sanctuary space. And what that is it's exposed framing. Even though we didn't get a ladder up and manually measure how far the framing went for this space, we were able to use a combination of tape measures and the scan to accurately draft that area or model that area. And then up on the top left. No, sorry, yeah, this was directly modeled, and this was not drafted first. This was imported directly into Revit or SketchUp or yep, from point cloud and went into Revit. Yep, and then we can export this and into PDFs or it's always
it's nice to see the draft.
Yeah, right, yeah. So it's always easier to if sometimes there's been instances where we model a project in Revit and then we deliver it to the homeowner, and then they say, we're actually working with a different architect now, and this architect does something in AutoCAD. It's relatively easy for us to take that 3D file and then export it down into 2D drawings. If we have 2D drawings and they say, well, we're working with an architect that does Revit, it's a different story because now we have to make something from
So why
2D.
do you ask them to go from 3D to 2D?
Why are we drafting floor plans if it can go from 2D to 3D so easily? 2D so easily. Time and cost essentially.
Doing the 3D takes more time.
Doing the 3D takes more time because you're modeling everything, whereas in 2D, you could if we're doing a single room, right, it's much faster to do it in 2D if you don't need 3D than to do it in 3D.
But you're talking only about Revit. Only about AutoCAD.
So I'm talking about AutoCAD versus Revit. It depends on the output.
When you're commenting that.
Mhm. So if we have 2D files and you want 3D files from it, you have to build that 3D model up, right? But if you have a 3D model of it in Revit and you need it in AutoCAD for some reason, we can export that out into AutoCAD is what I'm trying to get at. Not sure if that was conveyed properly. So let's talk about modeling and plan views. It's a lot of it's the same process. You just import that in that point cloud into Revit and start adjusting ranges, view depths, and set up your families, and we could model directly into Revit.
What would that take, like a church?
How long did that church one take? So that one was me and two other surveyors. I think scanning wise, took me, I want to say somewhere like a good half day, I think, only. In terms of how long it took to model it, I don't take a guess. Geez.
A day, 2 days?
Oh, I want to say at least a week. Yeah, to model everything, especially for something like this because it is, fairly. Yeah, definitely a lot of detail, and it's we didn't get full roof access because it was so high, so there were um, yeah, we took roof information that was scanned from the outside and worked it in Revit. So viewing the point cloud, this is talking about modeling from a point cloud. Here's an example. I believe this one is actually taken from one of our more heavy duty scanners. Um, but yeah, it's just building something in Revit. You could just do, in my experience, you could do more with it later on. Like I was talking about sections earlier. And then as with AutoCAD, this is a huge advantage when you have a complete point cloud for modeling. Using sections and adjusting section depth is crucial to viewing the point clouds effectively. And yeah, patience. Roofs are tough to model, especially in Revit, just because Revit has limitations, and you need to adhere to the limits because it's only able to model what you could theoretically build. So you get some really tricky roofs where you go into the framing and it's just really cobbled together. So our modelers have to get creative on how to do it because sometimes there's roofs that are built a certain way that Revit doesn't even recognize. So you kind of have to do different planes and surfaces to accurately match the point cloud. And I said there were three sections. There's actually a fourth section by request of by Donald here. I put down a little section that's saying, are there disadvantages of using a LiDAR scanner? Short answer is absolutely. It depends. Any technology, it's using the best tech for the best purpose, right? Here we have Colin measuring a bathroom by hand, and there are and we still do that for different types of spaces. Limited scope and economy of scale. If all you need is a floor plan of a 1,500 to 2,000 square foot house, and you don't need anything else, you just need walls, windows, doors. In my opinion, it's faster to do it by hand. I would say it's not worth the trouble of getting a point cloud. If all you need is good measurements of a single room, and you ask PPM to do it for you, I would go out there with paper and a tape measure and a disto, and that's how I would do it for you. It's just not as efficient. So yeah, like I said, economy of scale. Once you do a 8,000 square foot house, that's when it might get a little different, right? Even if it's just floor plan only. Processing and registration errors. When factors such as limited access, excess movement are present and may cause processing errors. And like I was saying earlier, it takes a little bit more experience to catch this on site. Here we could see on all the walls on the right, the walls are about 4 inches thick for the exterior. And that just doesn't seem right. This was caught by our QA, and one way, so there's two main ways we are able to catch this. One is we've offered 2 rounds of QA, and then the other way is we do on-site manual control measurements to compare with the point cloud data. So what I would do if I were measuring this on-site is I would take perimeter measurements of every single wall and draft it up. And then when I input, because I know for a fact I could use a tape measure and measure it. And if I say that wall is 96 feet, and then I import that point cloud and the point cloud is showing 92, then it's not something that's easily caught. But then based on comparing those two measurements, something that I know for sure versus the point cloud, I'm able to determine that, there was some kind of registration or scan error, in which case we would scan it again on site. So the as-built model can be used in multiple phases. So you can easily switch between existing, proposed phases. I know a lot of interior designers who personally like SketchUp because it's easier to kind of show to the homeowners. When you have a BIM model, moving from the design phase to the construction documentation is a lot more efficient. And it makes it easier to understand a project that you haven't visited yourself, since you can cut sections, view interior spaces, review roof massing all in 3D. And then some say Revit offers a more intuitive design experience and allow users to present 3D images at the planning stages to the owners and or planning departments. Personally, like I said, I think SketchUp is a great tool to do that with. And now I open it up to questions. Thank you all for asking questions along the way. Yeah. All right, we got a question in the chat.
How do you deal with the different wall thicknesses that are found in many old buildings?
How do we deal with the different wall thicknesses found in old buildings? If the wall we draft based on how it is, right? If there is a wall that is exceptionally thin based on our point cloud, after we do all the verification to make sure our point cloud data is correct. If one wall is abnormally thick or abnormally thin, that's how we show it as. We try to show it, within reason, as close to the way it is built, as built, right? Not construction documentation. So there have been plenty of instances where we go in and we deliver the file and they say, hey, why did you draft this wall at 8 inches thick and the rest of them at 5? And the answer is because that is how thick that wall is based on on-site verification in the point cloud.
So for wall thicknesses, what is your precision? What you can take it down?
Right. For wall thicknesses, what is precision resolution? Half an inch. Yeah, half an inch is what we draft to. We can adjust it depending. I delivered a project in, I want to say, Palo Alto recently, where they asked for like an LOD 250 type, and then we brought we had to use a different scanner and different techniques, but we brought the accuracy of the model. Yeah, we delivered in Revit, so we brought the accuracy of the walls down to the nearest quarter inch based on the scan.
How many architects know about LOD?
How many architects know about LOD? Level of detail. How many architects know about LOD? I think a lot of people know about LOD, but not everyone knows exactly what each LOD references. I had a client that we worked with for a few years call me recently. He asked for LOD like 500 or 400, and I got him over the phone. I'm like, I don't think that's what you need. And we discussed it. He goes, oh no, I just need the walls, the width drafted accurately. And I'm like, yeah, that's LOD 200. Because LOD 500s, you got to like figure out like what nails are used to like attach the drywalls in. Yes, Sydney.
So any tips for requesting as-built services, like what details or scope about the project we should be clarifying upfront?
What details or scopes are required to clear up front? So in our quote form, there's a note section and there's a stand. You could always give me an email or a call. Email is the best way to reach me. If you give me a call, I might be at an event like this, so I might not be able to pick up. But essentially, it's to start out, we need the address so we can look at the property. We need a output, and we need the scope. So once we have that, and then there's some notes for additional detail. I generally, if we've never worked together before, I give you a call to make sure we nail down the scope as accurately as possible, so that we're not, deliver you a file and come back and be like, we needed electrical, and we didn't do that.
So So a two-story, 2,000 square foot Berkeley house.
Two-story, 2,000 square foot Berkeley house, floor plans and elevations. Oh man, I was scared someone was gonna ask that question. I'm not scared because of the price. I'm scared because my short answer always is it depends. Yeah, okay. All right, yeah. Two-story, 2,000 square foot Berkeley house.
Wood flooring or tile?
Wood flooring or tile. AutoCAD.
I mean, that's the worst.
Yeah, we do have clients that work in Vectorworks. What we do is we draft it in AutoCAD and then save it down to like 2010 or 2013, and that seems to work. 1,500 to 2,500. It's a real ballpark number. Yeah.
So you go to a space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What suffers? Would you say it is accuracy suffers, or would you say it's the cost because you're doing taking more time?
If we go to a space and it's packed, it's jam-packed, it's got like a hoarder situation going on, what suffers, accuracy or cost? Both. Yeah, both. Cost on our end. You know, we don't, when we provide a quote and we have that proposal signed and you guys and our surveyors go on site and it's just floor to ceiling covered with books and bags and whatnot, it doesn't affect the cost, overall cost. So it takes more time to model and draft on our end, but we won't hit you with the surprise fee of a dirty room. In terms of accuracy, obviously, you know, the less you are able to see and draft from, just like taking a tape measure, right? The more packed it is, the less accurate it's going to be.
So I'm able to estimate the cost.
Yeah, so we, for the most part, are we able to estimate cost in advance? For the most part, we don't. Unless it's a huge project, we don't need to go on site to provide a cost. Just getting that address and taking a look at photos on site, square footage, scope, we're able to provide a cost.
But then you'd be surprised. You go to the space.
Oh yeah, for sure. That project all the way back. Let's see, that Berkeley one, that office space in Berkeley. I priced this at less than 10,000, and I had our modeling team get pretty upset with me after I priced it because the amount of work that was put in was substantial, substantially more than than what it ended up. We guessed based on access, based on size. Access was a huge thing because it was just different office spaces. So that added hours and hours of time. Who is on my team? So yeah, who is on our team? All of our surveyors are trained surveyors to use. A lot of them have never touched a mobile scanner before they're hired. And then there's a 3-month training period with the different scanners that we use. And then all of our drafters we have an in-house team. They produce all of our files. Then our surveyors take the scan, take the photos, take the measurements, we package it up, we hand it off to our drafting team, they hand it off to our QA team, and hand it back to me, and I deliver.
They don't have to come from the highest level.
They do not have to come from the highest account level universities.
I mean, that's an equivalent to like pretty typical common draftsmen that would work in an architecture office, or if they don't have any architecture experience.
I can't speak for every member of our team, but for our CAD, for our drafters, I want to say a good 60-70% of them are either directly from a trade school with drafting experience or are currently working on getting their architectural license. So we don't have any architects on our team.
So for very studied reasons, on my own as-built drawing.
Yep.
The question I'm curious about is, you're in the field, you got a good perspective on it, I do not. What percentage of the architects out there do you think are doing their own, and what percentage do you think are hiring somebody like you or somebody else to do?
What percentage are architects doing their own, and what percentages are hiring out? That is, yeah, that is such. I feel like we've been in the Bay for 10 years. We have last time I checked, 65% of our client base are existing architects. But I do know when I go to AIA events, I meet architects I've never spoken to ever. So it's really hard to give a ballpark number. There are some architects that we work with once a year because they only take one project a year, and there are some that gives us two a month. So it's hard to give you a real number.
Have you heard of a service called Hover 3D?
I heard of a service called Hover 3D. I don't think so. Is that the site planning, site measurement?
Oh,
okay.
If the whole wants to do, we share.
Little tribute.
Yeah, I think it's hard to be done. They have drones. They allow you to upload photos.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Right.
And they actually drone data.
Right. So the question or the comment is Hover 3D is some kind of program where they accept photos taken on site by the homeowners, and they provide plans. I know you could do that with an iPad, right? You could essentially use the new LiDAR scanning to get a basic set of floor plans. The question is it's just what you need. If that's all you need, it's not nearly as accurate. If that's something, but for like real estate purposes, sometimes they just need a quick and dirty floor plan, and they don't care about the accuracy all that much. And they ask us, and I give them a quote, and they say, "Whoa, that's way more than we need." Then it's really easy to pick up an intern and be like, "Hey, draft this up real quick, get some roofs in there, throw some walls," and if that's what you need, then that's a great program. But for like I said, historical purposes, or if you do need things to a certain level of detail, there's still no beating kind of that traditional way to get as-built yet.
That was a great question for you.
Yeah, sure.
So the reason that I have always done my home is the process of doing the as-built drawings, measured on site. And how I really get to instantly know the building.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I come away from the site visit with the actual CAD drawing. Do you find, so I wonder about other architects, and a lot of these architects, they don't have the same problem that I do. They can take your drawings and they can just run with it.
Yeah.
Do some clients, though, come to you for the first time, go through this, and then say, I want to go back to this?
Do we have some clients that come to us and want to go back to doing their own? Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was speaking with a client last week. We worked with him for a few years, and then he decided he wanted to do it himself. And then he gave me a call last week and said, actually, maybe we can talk about doing some Revit because he moved into a different program. It really depends on what you need. I do pride myself in being good at good with communicating with our clients, their needs, and making sure that it's met.
I'm not saying because there's any deficiency in
right.
what you're doing, but just that those architects do not have that same time on site,
yeah.
getting their head up the drain pipe as they otherwise would, and that, maybe a lot of architects.
Sure. So, for architects that want to see, get to know the house on site, we do that plenty. So there's two-part answer. One is you could do a Matterport virtual tour, which we offer, kind of like virtually move through that space. And a lot of times, our surveyors will meet the architect on site. So sometimes an architect will say, hey, we need a a remodel package, floor, roof, exterior elevations, and reflected ceiling plan, and electrical plan for you. And then they meet our surveyor on site. They meet the homeowner. They chat with the homeowner. They have their meeting with said homeowner on site. And then while they're doing that, they're also measuring the site, and they're going through and they're taking their own set of photos. So it's kind of like a two birds, one stone. So they're able to get to know the space, but they don't have to create the plans themselves either.
Do you provide photos?
Do we provide photos? Yeah. Yeah. So we take still photos on site unless requested by the client not to, which does happen. It's very rare. We provide the photos. We also use like a little 360 camera that our surveyors literally go from room to room and just hold the 360 camera and take photos throughout. And we don't deliver those as a standard to clients. I don't see why not. Sometimes they want more photos, and I say, hey, we have this extra set that's used for QA. If you don't mind seeing my face in every single one of them, I'm happy to send it to you.
Is that part of that little reallocated?
No, it's completely different thing. So there's a 360 camera, 360 camera from Rico. It fits in your pocket. We all of our surveyors have one.
Shake it above your head.
Do we shake it above our head? Our surveyors that are conscious of having their face be in every photo, they put the camera on top of their head and take their photo that way, so they can't see the face. I don't really care. I hold it up like the Statue of Liberty. I just go from room to take a lot of photos. It's like it's GoPro sized. It fits in the palm of your hand. You just go click a bunch of times.
Like at the beginning, you said that you're talking about your LiDAR scanners. You said something along the lines of, this is relatively new technology and it is evolving technology.
Yep.
Where do you think it's going? Have there been some in the field aspect of LiDAR scanning that people like yourself would like to be done better? Or where do you think it's all heading?
Where do I think this is heading with LiDAR technology as it is evolving? We've experienced a lot of the evolution of just better processing. So that's one thing that we've already seen. Where I see this going is AI, just taking that. Right now, we take that point cloud and we're able to use the algorithm to generate point cloud that our drafters draft from. Down the road, I can definitely imagine that there is some kind of
Help me.
take that point cloud and then it'll generate a rapid file for you. I don't. We can. I will not say that. This meeting is recorded. We will never fire any drafter. I think what that means for the foreseeable future is then we up our QA time, because that same level of trust, right? Taking that point cloud, and then having it be used, have AI take it to a whatever deliverable you want. We would then need to have humans then check to make sure it was modeled correctly in the first place.
What is the turnaround?
Yeah.
Following example.
What is the turnaround time? So right now, our standard is usually we can get someone out there within 10 business days. And then delivery, I want to say roughly 2 weeks after that. These are all the good questions, because these are questions I'm answering a lot right now with a caveat, because it is at this kind of season where everyone all of a sudden wants to add builds before the holidays come up, or so it is right now, it is particularly busy. Anything that is accepted while I'm here, as of today, would probably be scheduled for either late this month or early December even.
So for example, 2000 weeks full time, 20 hours a week, or just talking about time duration.
Are we talking about time duration or actual like weeks and turnaround? Actual weeks.
So what are the in the
What are the hours in the field? So let's go with the two-story 2,000 square foot Berkeley house, remodel package, floor, roof, and extra elevations. Depends on the surveyor, but I would ballpark it anywhere between 2 to 4 hours on site. Yeah, and you want to add, electrical plan, add an hour, just real ballpark. We've done, let's see, we've done like 8,000 square foot properties with floor, roof, exterior elevations, elect, and RCP. Either 2 days on site with the surveyor, or we send 2 surveyors. It'd be one day. It just kind of depends on our availability.
Do you do site plans?
Do we do site plans? Yes, but they are not legal licensed land surveys. We are not able to show property lines or setbacks. We use existing hardscape fence lines to create that site, and we discussed that with you on during the proposal process.
Does the technology help you there?
The technology helps, yeah, absolutely, for site plans, because I mean, back when we were doing this by hand, site plans were my least favorite things to do, because you're measuring the inside and outside of the house. You always have something to reference when you're shooting a disto. When you're trying to get a fence line that's curved and at an angle that's 100 feet away from the house, you're gonna have to do a lot of guesswork essentially, because you're trying to measure from that fence line to 2 points of the house and trying to triangulate all this information, and you're using measurements to base off measurements. This one doesn't, because it's all there.
So, to be clear, you said that your client, owns the property. Do they also get, if you use the point cloud to make it, does that also get them?
Clients own the files. Do the clients get the point clouds? Sometimes, if requested.
And are those point clouds very large sized files?
Are those point clouds very large files? Yeah. Are they hard to work with on a typical laptop? I would say yes. They're large files. I know a lot of our drafters or laptops are like 64 gigs of RAM, which is insane, and terabytes of hard drive space. One of the scanners I didn't talk about today, the BLK 360, the terrestrial one, I think they at a minimum they would need like a 2 terabyte hard drive just to make sure that they have the space to process the information.
What is the file type?
File type, what is the file type? So it generates into, it depends on the scanner. Each scanner comes out with a different file type. Leica comes out .geoslam file. Not Leica, sorry. The GeoSlam ones come out with the .geoslam file. The Leica come out with a different one. I can't remember the file type off the top of my head, but we all export that down into LAZ, LAS, or recap eventually. So we have different ways to convert all of the file into something that can be read into by AutoCAD.
So those raw files, they cannot be imported directly into AutoCAD.
The raw files cannot be imported directly. For the times when the client requests the point cloud from us, it would either be the LAS file or the LAZ file, which can be opened by a free program called Cloud Compare, or Recap, which is the proprietary Autodesk file type.
Currently, I don't think that can import.
I don't know either Vectorworks. I don't know if Vectorworks can open up
Liability issues.
I'm doing drawings, I'm supposed to be not intended in the drawing, but I can have some mistakes here and there, but I can't do something that looks really bad compared to other architects. And there are liability issues that you have to address.
Are there liability issues with address the clients? Yeah, absolutely. We're not architects, so they're not architectural drawings. So they're meant to be as like a tool for architects to use, and then convert those into architectural drawing sets. So is there anything preventing us from doing not as accurately as possible? No, except we want to work with you again. So we're trying to make sure that to create the most accurate files possible.
So in your experience, it's really not been an issue that has ever come up with something that really is trying to accurate, but you do that thing.
Has it ever come up where they say these drawings are not as accurate as I need and you did a bad thing? Not in those words, no, but it has come up where, they say, hey, most of the times when those instances come up, our clients are homeowners and the architects are a kind of a third party. To which I always recommend when calling a homeowner, I say, hey, are you working with an architect on your project? Because the last thing I want to do is give you something that you think you need and turns out you need something completely different. So I always try to make sure that the architect is involved from the beginning. And that has, not solved the problem. I don't think there when that happens and it's an architect saying this is not as accurate as we need or this is not what we need, um, it's just somewhere along the line, kind of communication did not go smoothly because we tried to communicate exactly what this is. These are as-built plan types, they're not architectural drawings. And as long as that initial communication goes smoothly, then no, we've never had any.
There has been discussion over the years about architects giving their CAD drawings, okay, to clients, and many have said, no, I'm not going to do that. And the reason, the argument was that if you provide the drawings and they pay you for them, you're providing a product. And if you're providing a product, you be judged into product liability, not negligence, is what architects are really considered. A contractor, for example, product liability. So if there's a flaw in your work, within a certain amount of time, they have to fix that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't speak too much on in terms of what you're talking about. What I can say is I prefer 100% of the time that our clients be the architects. And like I said, most of our clients are repeat architects. That being said, they know what to expect and after walk and ask for customizations, but they also know that what we're giving them, they need to verify before they can put their name on it.
We're signing our contract with our clients. Sure. A lot of us have some language in our contract that deals with liability. Defines what our liability is and what our liability is not. That you do an as-built drawing, you start with a written contract.
It does. We do start with a written contract. It does discuss those questions. I don't have the contract in front of me. I can't speak on the details. Yeah.
Do you have building contractors as clients?
Do we have building contractors as clients? Yeah, plenty.
If they
yeah.
a small residential deliver drawings to them, and then they must submit that for permits or liable, right? How do you do that?
If a contractor gets plans from us and they deliver them directly without doing anything to them as permits,
they're doing what they need.
Yeah.
They're run over your application.
Yeah.
You're using that as a permit set.
Yeah. That's what we do all the time. Yeah, that's fine. It's we're not we're your we provide the plans for you to, and by you that's architects, engineers, interior designers, homeowners to then work on, because you have then ownership of that product. You can then draw on top or edit or do anything you want with those things, put your name on them, show before existing conditions, proposed changes, and submit to the county. That's what they're for.
In the case of the contractor,
yeah,
taking care of the permit drawings and coming back, plan check. Is your name on the drawings?
No. If the contractors take our plans and then submit to the county, they would take our our as-built drawings and then convert it into what they need, into theirs, put their name on it, and then submit to the county.
But let's say they don't. Right? Something like that.
Then that's, I don't do that.
I'll get plan check corrections.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So we don't say don't do that.
We're not, so we don't provide, contractor drawings to submit. So if they take our drawings and say, I don't need to check anything, it's perfect, it looks great, and they just slap their name on it without any kind of QA on their end, and they submit it.
On them.
That's on the contractor.
We are at our scheduled end. Mike, that was a wonderful presentation today, and we all thank you, including, I don't know, some people on the sitting computer who can't just speak up. So thank you very much, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.